record, and we'll make sure that it's recording, and then I will go ahead and jump in. All right, and so professional name, you are using Vicki Fitch.
Yes.
All right, I'd just like to make that one
That's
last
me.
check.
Yep.
All right. Well, today on the Better Together podcast, it is a pleasure for me to welcome Vicki Fitch. Vicki, where are you joining us from?
I am in Chino, California. Good old Southern California here.
Oh, well, since I'm all the way across the country in Ohio, right now I have a little sunshine envy. Have you always been a Californian?
Well, that's a good question. I actually was born on the East Coast. I was born in Pennsylvania. My dad was in the military. We lived in Pennsylvania and Boston, but we moved out here when I was in kindergarten in Northern Cal, then to Texas. And so I've been here since third grade, which is, a few decades or so.
Well, you know what? My listeners cannot see you, but I can tell it hasn't been a few decades, honey. It's only been 15 minutes.
That's right, girl. That's right.
Absolutely. Well, Vicki, what I love about how, really connections bring us together, you were introduced to me by my new friend, Stacy Lynn Harp, she's with Bible News Radio, and she was telling me all about you, and you love Jesus, but you also have been a part of the world that many of my listeners are a part of, which is that direct sales world. So today I want to ask a few questions about direct sales, since there's so many folks who are out there who are part of a little of everything, whether it's some LuLaRoe or Avon, or my mom has been a Mary Kay woman since the beginning of time, or Plexus, or you guys, whatever that is. But Vicki, let's go ahead and let's go to California and your military family. Can you tell us about your growing up years, and was God a part of your life? And the reason why I'm asking that question was there was a little place in the introduction of your book where you talked about there were some memories in your younger life that may not have been the happiest memories. So just kind of bring us into your story.
Absolutely. No, I did not grow up in a Christian home. My family, they don't know the Lord. But, what's funny is that, we are a product of our own environment, right? And so my mom, who both my parents have unfortunately passed away, but my mom, right before she died, told me that she was a believer. Now, she's over 70 years old. Never once in my entire life did my mother tell me she was a believer. She sent us off to Sunday school as kids, but never walked the walk or talked the talk. But apparently inside, my mom had a relationship that she kept quiet and kept, to herself, because she was never taught how to actually express her faith. So my dad called himself an atheist. Now, that was truly ignorance. My dad really didn't know what an atheist was. And I mean that with all compassion and kindness. But again, he was a product of his own environment. He went to Catholic school his whole life, but he didn't know anything about Jesus. As a matter of fact, he said to me one day, which I think some of your listeners will find interesting. He goes, "Okay, I got a question for you, Christian." This is your dad saying this, right? And I was like, "Uh-oh, hold on. I'm waiting for a tough one." And he goes, "What? If the Bible's so great, why do they keep rewriting it?" And I was like, thinking to myself, do you mean like different translations, or like what? He goes, Old Testament, New Testament, they don't like it and they just rewrite it.
Oh,
and I was like,
precious.
Right? And I was like, oh, Daddy, no. That's before Jesus and after Jesus, right?
Precious.
But
I love
see,
that.
but it was ignorant. So to call yourself an atheist when you just have no information. So I think a lot of people don't recognize relationships. And honestly, as a Christian, I've seen a lot of, especially newer Christians, kind of get a little overzealous with their faith and therefore turn other people off, right? And so trying to give people an opportunity to share without judgment. So that gave me a chance to, to communicate with my dad, recognizing where this concept came from. So I'm a lonely Christian girl in my family.
But I love that story kind of kicking off and walking into our conversation today, because it shows your heart, especially your heart with your dad, and how he is like so many people around us. I think it was 21 Pilots. They have a song, and basically it's just this song about making sure that we don't judge people who don't believe, because there are things about their lives and how they grew up that we don't know. But when you think about your spiritual journey, as you think of your life, which part of your journey with God kind of stands out the most? Was it an experience in life that was difficult? Was it a place, maybe just this epiphany? I don't know. Tell us about a part of your spiritual journey that that really sticks out.
Well, it's not tough for me to talk about anymore, but it might be tough for some of the people listening if they're going through a similar journey. I believed in God my whole life, but I didn't have a personal relationship with Christ because I didn't have any examples. And when we were kids, we got sent off to Sunday school. But when I moved here, to California when I was in third grade, there was no bus picking us up like there was when we were in the military base. There was no bus picking us up, so there was no church. So I, kind of went through this bit of a starvation period of believing but not knowing really who he was. Like, even when I'd go through trials, I remember at night I would be, because my parents, although I've come to know them more, and in my book series people will recognize, but I did not feel loved or appreciated or that I was ever enough in my family. I never felt that. And so I would cry out, and I'm getting a little emotional myself, I would cry out to the Lord and say, if you're there, will you show yourself to me? Because I didn't see it anywhere, and it was really painful. So then many years later, when I ended up marrying an alcoholic drug addict, only for a year, but I married an alcoholic drug addict, and my life, I recommitted my life to Christ after that, because I remember, and this is, like I said, tough. I remember he came home one day and he said, I don't love you anymore. I'm not sure I ever did. I had an affair and I want a divorce, right? And this, I'm 21 years old. I own my own home. He didn't have anything. I had my own home. I had my own, everything. And I remember sitting there thinking, I got to stay together. I want to pull this. I'm tough. I can handle it. And then I fell apart. I literally fell on the floor sobbing because, again, this is a lot of backstory, but recognizing that I was never good enough for my family, or feeling like I wasn't. I was always trying to be the best. And so I didn't understand, and I wanted to figure out how I could not be a statistic. I know this is weird thinking, guys. I was only 21 years old. I didn't have any mentors. I don't want to be a statistic. I don't want this. I couldn't even put my thoughts together. And I remember wishing that God would put us back together. So God did something really bold and super painful for me and changed my life. So I'm super grateful for it. He brought us back together for a day. He brought it back. He goes, I love you. Everything I want. We went to our Leads Club together, and everything he said, oh, my favorite thing is spending time with my wife. I mean, it was like this exactly what I, in my mind, was thinking, okay, yeah, you're sorry. And I'm wonderful. I'm good enough. And he came home, and while we were walking up to the door, he dropped my hand. He goes, I can't do this. He got in the car and he never came back. So yeah, right. And it's like, I went in the house and I just sobbed and sobbed. And I was like, okay, Lord, thy will be done. I obviously don't know what I'm doing and I can't take it anymore. And that was the day I turned my life over to him. Like, I still didn't have that firm relationship with who he was, but I just said, I'm done. I can't do this on my own. So that is the most dramatic and important piece of my life. And I went from there just really learning and finding a really great church and finding out who I was and how to be the best version of myself.
Well, so I'm going to encourage the listeners to just take a moment and process everything that happened there, because there are some big themes that I know right now. I know for me on my heart when talking about not feeling like you were loved or enough. Then the experience of choosing someone outside of your family, getting married, and discovering they're not who you think they are, and then the rejection. There is a term that you use pretty early in your book, Direct Sales 101. The term was the pain of perfectionism.
Yes.
And that feeling of not feeling like you were enough, and then working harder and harder. And as readers who pick up your book will discover in your story, you bought your first house when you were 19, you had your first job when you were 12. So there's this really strong achievement part of you that has to bump up against the rejection and the feeling unloved.
Amen.
How has your relationship with Christ help you carry those two big parts of who you are?
Well, God turned that, like I said, as I got to heal, and it took some time to heal, but it wasn't as long as I thought it would. There's was emotional bouts that would come through, but when I started living my life for Christ and stopped living my life for what I thought I wanted or what I thought I needed or who I thought I was supposed to be, God turned everything around. He just started filling my heart with confidence. And I was always very confident in X, Y, and Z, right? Things that had to do with my abilities and my talents, I was always very confident. But when it had to do with my looks, when it had to do with things, I mean, I do believe I'm a beautiful person inside and I believe outside.
Yes, you
But
are.
thank you, sister. I appreciate it. And by the way, that color looks fab on you. I know your listeners can't see you, but man, girl, you look great. But right. And so my whole thing is that my dad, and I think this doesn't come out until book 2. My dad used to, again, bless his heart, and I know he wasn't meaning to do it, but he used to call me thunder thighs, right? I was a twiggy girl. I was almost 6 foot tall. I did some modeling, but he'd call me thunder thighs. And I mean, I am 6 foot tall now, but at the time when he started doing this, when I would walk down the hallway, true story, he would go, thunder. And I felt so insecure about my body. And then, and again, ladies, I share this with you because I want to give you hope and I want to inspire you that you are enough just the way you are. But he also used to say in front of his friends, when are you going to Frederick's to buy some falsies? True story, right? At 12 years old, right? Heartbroken, feeling like my body wasn't enough. So having somebody reject me and say I had an affair and I want a divorce, I had nothing left in the self-esteem department.
And when you were speaking about that healing and recovery and finding your centeredness in Jesus, what were some of the things about how you thought about yourself? What were some of the things that you had to change? So when you could hear your dad's whisper of thunder thighs as you were walking down the hallway and you might have felt your thigh rub together, what did you instead have to tell yourself?
You know, I can't tell you that I remember what I said or how I dealt with it because it took a lot of time to go through that. And I will tell you, I went through, we'll call it a wrong turn at Albuquerque. I think if we use a cartoon reference, you know, where I started in different places in my life, trying to not use my sexuality, but you know, when you overcompensate for something and you put that barrier up, right? So I did some things in my life that you know, to prove that I was good enough, like, you know, that my body was good enough. I did some things to prove those things that were completely out of insecurity and pretend, right? So I don't remember exactly. I think it was just God working on me slowly. I don't remember any specific thing. I just recognized, starting with giving, you know, letting go and letting God, giving it to him and letting him lead and watching the blessings, and then recognizing that, you know, and I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but that men did find me attractive. But I started recognizing the attractiveness was because I was confident in who I was. It was, you know, I knew who I was. And the more I became comfortable, which I did a lot of journaling, every day I read a Bible study, I do a devotion. You know, I journal still every day. Like I literally have boxes and boxes of journals because God gave me a chance to work out a lot of my issues on paper. Like, because I would write to him, God, I'm so angry at so-and-so. And then by the end, he'd be like, but I guess I probably should look and figure that out. That was actually I should have set a boundary there. And that, you know, it's like he just worked through me while I'm writing out this rampage that turned into a blessing, right?
Right. And I've journaled since I was 8 years old. And I have no idea why it occurred to me when I was a little kid. Maybe I was 9. I probably couldn't write that well at 8. But I know it was around 4th grade. And I just started sitting down and writing down what was on my mind or what I was feeling. And it was I didn't think much of it as a kid. I just knew that was inside of me. And like when I look back now, I think it is a profound and powerful thing that a little black kid on one side of the US named Barb, and then there was this beautiful little girl on the other side of the country named Vicki, and both of us were pouring our hearts out in these little journals. I found my 7th grade journal a couple of months ago, and I took it into a career day at an elementary school because they wanted me to come in and talk about being an author. And I started reading some of those entries to the little kids. Their faces, these 6th graders, they're just like, and I was like, yes, you can write down all of these crazy thoughts too.
I love it.
Well, and I don't know about you, but like some of the people that I was talking about in the 7th grade, I'm friends with them still on Facebook. And I was like, oh Lord, what would happen if they, so anywho, I love how you found a way. I advocate journaling. Ladies, you've heard how much I love it from me. You've heard Vicki talk about it. A journal is part of the journey. Now, also though, part of your journey was that achievement part of you. At 12, you got your first job. At 19, you bought a house. At 21, you owned a business. When you think about being an entrepreneur, kind of tell me about what that part of your identity, how it makes you feel alive.
Well, you know, back then, and again, I think this is part for the journey that people need to recognize this, because wherever they are in their walk, they need to recognize that these steps are coming, right? Whether you feel really confident, you're going to hit a bump and feel like crap. You know, it's just going to happen. There's going to be days we don't feel good. So on that entrepreneurial journey, in the beginning, when I was 12, I wanted something, I found a way to get it, and I developed a lot of confidence because you know, it's like you don't know what you don't know until you know it. People were afraid of the phone. I was not afraid of the phone. So I recognized, okay, there's something here. When you can fill a need that other people don't want to do, that's a great thing. And so then,
well, and real quick,
sure.
Tell everyone what that first job was. I cracked up laughing. Explain that story.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So at 12 years old, back in the day, you know, we didn't get an iPhone 6 when we were 5 or 6 years old, you know. And so I desperately wanted a phone line in my room. I was almost a teenager and I just really wanted a phone. And I asked my dad.
Can you explain what a phone line is? Because
yes,
there are listeners of different ages. So explain what you mean, because somebody's like, phone line? Yes.
I know, right? It plugs into the wall. I called it my curly corded beauty because it has a little cordy, you know, rounded cord. And it actually you actually had to pay the phone company to come out and install a jack where you wanted it, you know, that looks right. It looks like the cord you use to connect the internet. It looks similar to that. Right?
That's amazing. And so what did your dad say when you wanted this curly corded beauty?
He said, no, well, he said, I'm not paying for it. And I thought for me, that was success, because usually what my dad, Mr. Military, says, no, there was just one word, there's a period, sometimes an exclamation point, and there was no discussion with Mr. Military. That was it, right? And when he said, I'm not paying for it, I had hope, because I knew that was not a no. And so I was trying to figure out how I could earn money. And I had an older brother and an older sister there. They had all the babysitting gigs. And I was trying to figure out, what can I do? You know, and his friend was there and he had an insurance agency. And he said, I'll pay you if you can get people to have appointments with me, you know? And I was like, okay. And like, they gave me no instruction. Literally, he just said, find out if they'll have appointments. I took the phone book, and if you don't know what a phone book is, it weighs about 30 pounds, you know?
Right.
It's like the old ones were like literally not 30 pounds, but they're like 5-10 pounds, and they are 4 inches thick, 5 inches thick, right?
Yes. You know what? I would say I would give it at least 10 pounds. I mean, back in the day when everyone had a phone, those suckers were our lifeline.
Right. The white pages, the yellow pages, that's where that's the only place you knew how to get a phone number for somebody.
And remember that everyone's phone number was there and their address.
I know, right?
That part is hysterical to me. There used to be a thing that we used to be able to have people's addresses. Like, we hide our address from people now.
Well,
So
and when we were kids, if we liked a boy, sometimes we'd look up that ad and say we might drive by. Now it's stalking, but it wasn't then. It was
you
like,
know what?
woo,
It
woo,
was not. We were on our bicycles and we
right,
were pedaling across town. And if they lived in a cul-de-sac, that was always really embarrassing
right.
because you
Yeah.
couldn't like get in and get out without being seen.
I think we would have been best friends if we lived close, girl.
Oh my gosh, because none of those boys wanted to date me either. So yes, I went on many times where I was riding by boys' houses who did not want to see me. So you
Right?
have this phone book and you're
Oh,
12
God.
years old and he wants to hire you. And so what do you do in your first entrepreneurial adventure?
I grabbed that book and a pen. I walked into my parents' bedroom because the only other phone was out where they were. And I just called and said, "Hi, this is Vicki with Farmers Insurance. And I was just calling to see if we could give you a free estimate." And people would say yes or no. It was before telemarketing wasn't cool. I mean, now we don't like this, and they were like, "Oh, sure." Or, "Hey, can't hurt to have an estimate," or whatever. Anyway, I'd just mark a check mark by the people that say yes. And I said, "Well, I'll have Mr. Bruner call you tomorrow." I didn't know to book times and dates and all that so much. But anyway, and I came out after 45 minutes with 20 some odd names, 23, 27 names. And they literally were floored. They're like, "What?" And he goes, "What did you say?" I don't think I put that in the book, but he's like, "What did you say? Like, did you promise them a car or something?" And so I recited my little script that I just kind of made up. And he was like, "Okay, you're hired." And I was like, "Yes." Right. And so it was just this fantastic fun thing. So anyway, that's how I started my first business.
There are folks out there who have that entrepreneurial heart. When you think of your journey during those first years and being on your own, and in fact, you opened up a bookkeeping business a little while later, and then there were lots of businesses that you started and sold.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how would you describe the entrepreneur's heart?
I think an entrepreneur knows their heart. They have this drive and desire inside to do something, not just to do it, but to achieve something, to reach a goal or to do. Sometimes I think we start a venture because we know that there's money in it, but to keep us engaged, we have to find a passion. We have to love it. And that's what I teach people. You got to love what you do. And that can come in a variety of ways. It might be your love of helping people, and therefore you start small things and hire them in to get it done. But I think an entrepreneur really does know. Now, I do think some of you that are thinking, "Oh, I'm not an entrepreneur." The bully in your head could be telling you you're not because someone told you couldn't, or someone told you that it's bad, or someone told you something else. So I want you guys to look in your own heart and like, where's your fire lit? What is your passion? Because when you're really ignited about something and are willing to do, what it takes to get it done, you probably have an entrepreneurial spirit in there somewhere.
And that is such beautiful encouragement. Thank you for sharing that with people. And so you've been an entrepreneur and been in the direct sales field for many years. As you think about your experience in an industry that has a lot of opinions about it, uh,
Sure.
what are some misconceptions that people have about direct sales? And when I say misconceptions, it's what are things that people say over and over again about direct sales that you go, "That's just really not true. You guys should stop saying that."
Yeah, a lot of people, well, they'll call it a pyramid scheme, right? And that's the big thing. Like, you'll see little memes about it. That's a pyramid scheme. That's a pyramid scheme. And in the book, I actually do break down all of them. And I confess that I actually did get in a pyramid scheme when I was 18. Like, it was a bummer, but I didn't recognize it. And they weren't outlawed at the time. It's when they were first kind of burgeoning, and all of a sudden people are trying to make fast money. So it's not a pyramid. People get paid. You do get paid to train and develop the people on your team, but that's the whole point, is that you're getting paid a percentage of what you sell normally, and then you also get paid a percentage of additional sales that your team does based on you training and developing them. If you don't train and develop your team, chances are they're not going to flourish and you're not going to get paid. So, it's designed to help you to focus your time and attention on other people as well as yourself and share your wealth of knowledge.
There are a lot of listeners on the Better Together podcast who fall into that category of having children at home, whether they are married, single again, but they have children in the home. And my listeners, there's going to be a lot of them where the kids are going to be 2-ish, 3-ish up to adulthood. And
Sure.
there are many opportunities to be involved in either a direct sales, a multi-level marketing, or a network marketing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if you are sitting in front of a woman who's trying to decide if it's a good fit for her,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the things that you ask her, questions that she should think about?
Number one is, do you love this product? Do you love this business? If you don't love the product, pick another. I mean, and don't send me hate mail, but this is the truth. If you don't love what you're selling, you're never going to put your heart and soul. You're never going to be able to get through those barriers and I'm going to take that back because I don't believe never should be used. You have much harder time getting through barriers of selling or recruiting when you don't love what you do. If you don't really believe it's the best product or service out there, then pick something that you do. My first experience was in scrapbooking, which I loved.
I saw you were a with creative memories. I
Yes.
creative memoried myself through the late 90s, early 2000s, honey. I saw that and I was like, I meant to dig out my album. My husband and I went
Oh.
to Africa and I have my kids' early baby books. I actually just let go of my last creative memory stuff. I promise you, in July. I
Let's
just
see.
let go. So yeah. And so why did you sign up to join the Creative Memories team? And
That
how does
is
that relate to a woman who's thinking about it today?
That is a really great question because again, now here I am, I've already, had my businesses when I was younger. I already bought my house. And by this time I've already been married and now divorced. And, and now I've sold one company, my bookkeeping and tax company. I went to work for my fiance at the time, which was a publicly traded company to run a large division for them. And then we left there to start a concrete resurfacing company because we're both entrepreneurs. So here I am. And we promised when I got pregnant, because I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, we promised as soon as you get pregnant, which we were trying from the very beginning, then you're going to retire. So I got pregnant. I kept, the business just kept growing. God just kept blessing it, right? And every time I'd hire somebody to take over, we needed another person and another, and it just kept going. And so here I have this baby now, and the business is just growing and growing, and I just couldn't get out, I because it kept growing. And but I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and I loved scrapbooking. I started scrapbooking way back when I was 8 years old, in the old peel and stick Credi albums that look terrible now. Yeah, but I have them still.
I
Right?
remember those. Did you ever have the scratch and sniff ones?
I did not
Yes.
scratch and that. Maybe that's an East Coast thing. I don't think I've ever
Yeah.
seen those.
Yes, scratch and sniff, honey. It was amazing. Holy moly. I kept that thing, I think, till I graduated from high school because
Oh
those
my
stickers
gosh.
were spectacular. But
Oh,
anyway,
stickers I knew, not scrapbooks, but oh yeah, scratch and sniff stickers. Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I put them in my little scrapbook. So you had the baby,
And then, well, while I was pregnant, my now daughter-in-law, her sister was because my husband's older than I am, and so I actually have 5 grandkids as well. So, but my daughter-in-law and I were pregnant at the same time. So my her sister was a creative memories consultant, and my husband got me baby book and a wedding book for Christmas. Oh yeah, add that and the hormones, and oh my gosh, I was gone, right? And so she kept asking me about, do you want to be a consultant? I was like, girl, I got a baby I don't have enough time with. I got a company that's growing so fast. No, until the day she told me how much money I would save. So I started as a hobbyist that just wanted a permanent 30% off coupon. That was my whole thing right there. And then I went to a convention and caught the vision, and it totally changed my life. It absolutely changed. So if you guys are thinking about doing something in the direct sales industry, you can absolutely do it around your schedule, around your children, around your dreams and goals, all those, I went all around the world, all expenses paid, and being top 10 worldwide had some additional perks, so, having the suite on the cruise ship for 7 days and having the butler and the maid, it's like things I would never do for myself, no matter how much money. I wouldn't drop 30 grand or 40 grand on a cruise. It's just like not who I am. I'd go put a down payment on another piece of real estate, So
Right.
that's just, reminding them, dream big and go for it. Believe in yourself and do it.
And I'm glad that you ended with the dream big, because I think there are a group of women who are like me, who are more on the practical end of things. And so there are women out there who are looking at their families, and whether they want to stay at home with a child, whether they're trying to pay tuition, or they're trying to save for vacation, and they're looking at direct sales. One of the things you talked about was making sure that they absolutely love the product. Another thing that you talk about, especially in your book, is having great mentors, because people like you do not end up in the top 10 worldwide without other mentors. How are direct sales mentors crucial to a consultant's success?
Well, I think, first of all, as we talked about earlier about the journey, an entrepreneur goes on a journey, whether it's in direct sales, whether it is, a hardware store or a fast food restaurant. It doesn't matter what it is. There are cyclical things that are going to happen. There's ups and there's downs. There's profit and there's pain. There is a lot of things. So having somebody to help you to know that it's coming, it can soften that blow. It recognizing, okay, this is a period that you're about to go through a downturn. You need to start looking for another avenue to be able to expand that, or a market separator, or something to ease the jolt that's going to come. Or when you feel overwhelmed and burnt out because you weren't, what I call, there's a non-negotiable, in your schedule. There's some non-negotiables. And if you're not planning in time for yourself, and if you don't love what you do, if you're not investing in you, in your spirituality, in your education, in learning about people or learning about yourself, you're gonna burn out. And so recognizing, having somebody say, here's some recommendations, and then guiding you through the process was critical. Listening to Jim Rohn. I love Jim Rohn. God rest his soul, but he just was such an inspiration to me. There's so many people that gave me that, but I didn't have a mentor in the direct sales industry, which is why I started coaching and writing those books, to try because I could have made it so much faster. And if I had somebody going, oh girl, you do not want to do that, let me tell you what's going to happen.
Really, if you can take a moment,
Yeah.
what was one of those lessons that you learned from what you call the School of Hard Knocks, which you said is a great place to get an education?
Yes.
Briefly tell me one of those stories.
Oh, a hard knock story?
Yes.
Let's see. Okay. Let me start with telling you one of the most, impactful things and I know Randall Harp, Stacy's husband, hates the word impactful. So Randall, if you're listening, I'm sorry, brother, I'm using the word. One of the most impactful things was when Jim Rohn said, there's such a difference in words, right? And there's a difference between saying what's wrong with you and what's troubling you. And when you become sensitive to answering, those kind of questions, it makes it easier when you transition into things we were talking about earlier, like having a son with Asperger's, recognizing that I had to use different word choices. So there's been a lot of hurdles along the way that, like getting into business with someone who was not equally yoked in one of my companies, who took advantage of us, recognizing that as much energy as I have, that if I did not hold on to my own reserves, that, people would suck the last bit out. And I had to set boundaries. So I didn't spin out of control, and I never spun out of control, but I got to tell you, there's days on the treadmill where I just wanted the treadmill to stop until I started going, okay. And my business coach was like, okay, you can get off. I was like, I can't, you don't understand. I got this. And she's like, no, you can. If you don't, you're going to fly off. It's like that. So you have to slow down.
That right there, I believe, is a message that will preach no matter where anyone else is at in life. You can slow down and you can get off, like that.
Yes.
there are a number of great features that you have in your Direct Sales 101 book. But the broader picture is in 2018, you set this amazing goal that was 12 books in 12 months. Now, last year I wrote 2 books in 6 months, and that was quite a challenge. Tell us about that BHAG, that big, hairy, audacious goal, about that goal and what you've learned from setting a goal that aggressive.
Yeah. Okay. It is a big goal and bigger than I really thought because I truly am blessed. Like when I sit down to write, God just flows right through me. Like I literally write, anywhere from 500 to 1200 words in an hour. Like it just comes. And I know she's looking at, you guys can't see her, but she's looking at me like, wow, right?
I'm looking at her on behalf of some of my other writing friends, because there are times as a writer where you sit at the page. With books, not so much. But with a blog post, I will go, so let me go clean up the rest of my house because clearly nothing is coming to me. And Vicki's like, yeah, so you know what I've discovered, Vicki, in just our short conversation? That God is giving you all of my good material.
That's it. I love it.
Seriously, but I love the blessing that you feel it flowing through you. So as you feeling it flowing through you, how did that lead to this big challenge that you set for yourself?
It is such a thing because I started live streaming about 3 years ago, which is actually where I met Stacey Harp, and I just started talking, and I recognized that there was this repetitive thing of them having a lack of hope, a lack of belief in themselves, not believing who they are. And so as I would talk, I would be like, oh, I just come up with these analogies. And I said, there's a bully in your head. You need to evict them, and I'm like, I'm going to do a book on that, evict the bully in your head, because I think that's where people are struggling. I didn't have a book. Like, it's just something I would say, right? And then other things I'm like, yeah, there is profit in the pain, and I'm going to do a book on that too. So I kept talking about it. And then people kept asking me, when are you going to do that? When are you going to do that? And to me, I was just like kind of making some mental notes, but I also run multiple companies, including a nonprofit, and I have coaching clients. I got 2 kids, including one with special needs. Like my life is really busy, and I just hadn't put it on the calendar to do, so it wasn't going anywhere. So one day, just a multitude of things happened, and people were asking, and I was like, okay, if I start, I'm going to do the books next year, but if I do one, like what? If I do one every 6 months, then it's like 20 years before I get all these books out, and people won't even want to see the sequel to this one. By then they'll forget who it is. I couldn't think of anything to do besides just do a BHAG and then make it a really a goal, and then turn it into a marketing opportunity and say, hey, nobody's done it before that I could find. I only found 2 people. One person did some little gaming things. There were about 20 pages each. They did 12. And one woman had pre-written some romance novels that were still much shorter than what I am writing. That's a whole nother story. But and so nobody's actually done this before. And I thought, well, God, and I prayed about it, and God's like, go do it. And I asked some people, and then one live stream, I said, I'm doing this. And on that live stream, a girl said, I have a publisher for you. And she connected me to the publisher, and they loved it. And boom, here I am.
Alrighty. So that's how we get it done. Well, when I am creating the show notes for the audience, I am going to link all the listeners today to the hashtag 12 books in 12 months project. And then and Vicki, as we're wrapping up, there's one more initiative that's close to your heart. It is the You Are Enough campaign. And for those of you who are familiar with me and the Better Together podcast, you know my passion for people to see themselves as God sees them instead of seeing themselves through the lens of what culture. So, Vicki, tell us about the You Are Enough campaign and the heart of why you began it.
Okay. Well, in Evict the Bully in Your Head, recognizing that we all have a bully in our head, one that tells us we're not good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, not pretty enough, not thin enough. And of course, it started out with my own journey of always feeling like I wasn't enough until recognizing later. And so I, want to have a global initiative, which I'm launching right now. Just you guys are getting in on this ground floor, right? Is that I'm launching it right now. I'm doing some stuff in some schools, and it's called You Are Enough, and recognizing that you have value just the way you are. That we need to believe in ourselves. Not that we don't need outside help, not that we stop wanting to improve, but we need to want to improve for us because of the journey it will take us on and how the growth it will cause, not because someone else wants us to change, not because someone else thinks we're not enough. So I want to start, I preach this all the time on my podcasts and my broadcasts and through the books to everybody, but I want to start with the kids because I think kids can influence their parents. And if we start with that younger generation, we can stop these bully births with them believing they're not enough. Then we can change what happens when kids are tolerant of each other and tolerant of differences like Asperger's, or tolerant of differences like kids wearing glasses, or kids being heavy, or being diabetic, or, being quirky. Right? And so my hashtag on the sequel to Evict the Bully in Your Head is Own It, how to step up and stand out. And the subtitle is hashtag Quirky is Cool. It's for my son. And Normal is So Yesterday. Because we all need to believe in the value of who we are just the way we are right now. And that's my mission and my message.
Well, and I think that is a place where we can finish up today's conversation. That is such a powerful way to finish up today's conversation. So I am so grateful, Vicki, that you joined me today. And for the listeners, again, I will link you to not only Vicki's website, but as well as the hashtag initiatives. And one thing that I would love is for you out there, if you're listening, Vicki called you today to dream big. So if you
Amen.
have a big dream, it'd be super fun if you would share what that dream is in the comments. Let us celebrate that dream with you. And you never know, just like Vicki sharing about her 12 books in 12 months and somebody chimed in with the publisher, you never know what connection God may have if you speak your dream. So Vicki, thank you again for joining me on today's Better Together podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation.
All right. Well, let me stop the recording.